Well, hello out there, everyone. Sorry we are late. In fact, there's a bit of a technical snafu. We've been talking to ourselves for 15 minutes, but now we're talking to you. Amazing. I'm just going to make sure. Yes, we are now. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us. Sorry again that we're a little bit late. Yay. Here we are. Okay, it is now officially working. Wonderful. Again, hello. Welcome to my home from yours. Thank you for being with us. We want to just come in to bring you something else on another Friday. We're trying to make this an annual thing. Sincerely, thank you all to all of you who've joined us the last few weeks. Our minds are literally blown that so many of you came and watched us every week. We had a very fun time. We hope you did as well. Thank you. Tonight we'll just be, for the next half hour or so, we'll just be answering some of your questions that you've given prior to this, and feel free to ask them in the chat, as you've already been. We've already got some answers, because we've already talked through them. Amazing. But it's not just me here. I'm also joined by some of other friends from their own homes, so please give a warm hi and a welcome to Stephen Stout and Madeleine Bundy.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Amazing.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yay. And, of course, please give a warm hello from New Mexico to Mr. Brian Metolius, the Music Man himself.
Hello.
Hello, Brian.
Hi, everybody. It's good to talk to you.
For the first time.
For the first time.
What feels like the second.
Well, you're right.
First.
You're right. But listen, we had a really lovely chat, just us.
Oh, it was so
Yeah.
good.
And now we will talk through some of those questions because they were so spectacular that you asked. So just to kick us off, thank you for joining us. The last 3 weeks we've been doing readings of these other plays that were in the Puffs tetralogy, and we've been really bowled over by the amount of people who've tuned in and watched them, or watched them time shifted or something like that. It's been really fun. But at the end of each one of those things, we were also super surprised that people wanted to stick around and just ask questions about literally anything. So as people who never thought of 4 weeks ago that we'd be steadily running a YouTube channel, here we are to answer questions that you have about Puffs, other projects that we're working on, other things that might appear on this channel, or literally anything under the sun, including how everybody is holding up in this very, very trying time. So to kick us off, Matt, because I feel like this is part and parcel of this. So what is it like to adapt one of your pieces for the innovative medium of Zoom-based remote performance, and also what goes into directing it and how you come up with the choices of the staging vocabulary and stuff like that?
Yeah. So what's been crazy about this was, Steve texted me 4 weeks ago or however long it was like, hey, what if we did the reading of the 19 Years After play, for charity? What if we threw that together? Because these things were never intended to be seen beyond the small theater audience that hung around after a few shows and caught some of these readings. And they're things that I think are very funny. So I've always wanted for them to be out there in the world a little bit more. So I thought, sure, why not? But what's really nice about these is that they were never written with the intent of being staged on a stage. And so that there's already filmic elements. It already very much lends itself to being on a camera. And so there was a lot to play with already with space and being in these little boxes that we could do. So that lent itself somewhat easy, but for the most part, it's just been like an absolute crazy learning experience of bringing these to your homes via these little screens. It was about 2 weeks or so after the initial idea of learning how all this technology works and how to actually, get this program to capture audio. It took me a whole week. So that was kind of the biggest pitfall. And then the moment that we all got into the rehearsals of all of us in the room, it all just kind of clicked into place. It was very much the same way that we've worked in the past, where it was just, let's all have fun together. How do we have fun? What are the ideas? I had a few here and there. And the more and more we went along every week, we kind of figured out some tips and tricks. I think it was the 19 Years After reading. It was the moment we were kind of just reading through the script, but the moment that someone handed a piece of paper to one another, and we realized that it actually happened. Yes. So actually, I'm handing it currently to Steve and Maddie. Thank you.
On my computer, you're handing it to me.
Exactly, and that's the very tough part. Is that
right.
That was one of the biggest hurdles that we had to come, is that this looks different on everyone else's screen, but what you're all seeing out there is what's on my screen. And so everyone just kind of had to trust me that it's like, no, you're handing it to the right person. But the moment that we did that and we figured out some of that stuff, it was like, oh, there's something here. You can actually make these somewhat entertaining. And we're continuing to figure that out. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Maddie can speak to this a little bit also too, where it's like this is similar to like if we were in a rehearsal room, it's like we all just start spitballing ideas and throwing out how various potential solutions to how we might be able to tackle somebody falling from the heavens onto a giant orange, or how to do funny entrances and exits with everything. Maddie, specifically, how did you learn to do all this set building, this costume building, and this prop building?
So I've already explained this to Matt and Brian.
I can't wait to hear it again. I'm so excited.
So a lot of it is self-taught, and I've just always had a desire to make art and make things with my hands. And through doing theater, I sort of fell in love with with props and how props can add so much to storytelling, and how much that iconography can mean so much to a universe and a story. And I just kind of kept making things throughout high school and throughout college. And fortunately, I hope it's been very useful to Matt and the world the world he wants to build and share with the universe. But a lot, I went to art school. I did take art classes, but a lot of it was just self-taught and just a desire to make things even when there isn't any money to make things.
Which is a lot of the time.
Often there's no money.
Which is a shocking percentage of the time.
Yeah, figuring out how to do a show at a very nice and shwee off-Broadway venue.
Which it did lend itself somewhat to then figuring out how to make a show from what do you have in your house?
Yeah.
Right
well,
now.
I mean, that was also a thing like back when even we were doing it at the Pit, where the discussion was like, well, the other people who, do this thing have all the resources in the world. So what is it to do where it's like what we can, how can we make rough magic with the things that we have?
It is fortunately, not having money is fortunately dramaturgically appropriate to particularly the Puff story, because you can, what if there's a world where the Braves do have all the resources and the Puffs don't?
I'm pulling questions from Twitter, Instagram, and from our lovely live chat, which thank you all for all of these. This is amazing. Matt, this is one from a Twitter user at SM_Cali1. What was the thinking, and this is spoiler filled, but I assume if you're here, you at least know the events of Pop Stars have an increasingly eventful years at a certain school of magic and magic. Matt, what was the thinking behind Wayne's first story, specifically also how it ends?
Wait, I'm sorry. What?
basically, why in telling his story about telling his story about the underdogs?
Yes.
Why center it on Wayne, for example, and the choices that went into making Wayne the way he is, but also like how his arc or kind of lack thereof to some extent.
Yeah. So that the Puffs itself is a celebration, as we put in the tagline. It's a story for everyone never destined to save the world. And a part of it is that is a warm embrace of the fact that even those people whose stories maybe don't end with you facing off with a big baddie or some sort of villain, or even more mundane versions of that, whatever it is, the job promotions or whatever, is that story, whatever that life story is equally as wonderful and valid and full of so many little nooks and crannies as any book would be. If you were to look at your own life, there's going to be a cast of characters behind you. There's going to be all these circumstances that you've gone through that, with some flowery language added in, would be just as wonderful and beautiful as, a certain boy wizards. And that was always the story of Wayne, is that it was, what do we do with this kid who thinks he should be all of these things, but sadly he's not. But that's okay, because he still lived his life and he still made a bunch of friends and he still had a wonderful time, and, up until the end. And so the end specifically with that, is just kind of moving that forward, is that yes, while he never maybe got to reach the levels that he wanted in his life, he still left behind a very specific legacy and still left behind a wonderful memory with these people, and it just felt right for that.
But I would say though that I mean, spoilers, he does die a hero.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So like, he does become those things.
He does. He finds it's a different version of what he expected, which I think is most people's journey in life ends in a place with that sentence.
Right.
Yeah, I think that going back to, I mean, this just occurs to me, just remembering this. It was like the part of the reason is why he's so versed in all these like mythic stories is he knows what's supposed to happen to him, right? So we deny him that for the entire time. And then when we start year 7, it starts to seemingly happen where we're getting to the bit where it's going to explode. But then it goes back to this thing we had talked about way back when was when we were doing our research into sort of the nooks and crannies of the lore that we then used as the things that we were able to satirically poke fun at or reinvent or look or use to tell a story about somebody who's not necessarily a chosen one. It was about like, how do we build the tomb of the unknown puff?
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the detail of like, oh, they're the people who supposedly in the lore were the people who died in the largest number in this enormous battle. And it's like, how do you, so how do we make that thing that's literally just a group noun feel personal and other things?
And it was embracing that idea that, you know, there was, I think if you just said this, the unnamed, there was a certain amount of unnamed kids who did not make it out of that. And it was giving some names to that.
Oh, these are so delightful.
All right.
Ryan, this is a popular one that we've chatted through briefly, but the people, Brian, they want what they want. The last time we were told to do something, it took us 2 years to get it recorded and on the internet from when we were doing it at the pit, and somebody said, hey, you guys should record this and put this on the internet. And we were like, no, we're gonna first go off Broadway and then record it. But for you, the Puff soundtrack, Brian.
Right.
When or how can we expect it? And why have you denied it from us for so long?
When?
Okay. All right. Let me answer your last question first. And why have I denied you for so long? And that is because I'm a jerk. But why? No. But as far as Puff's soundtracks go, I'm working on it right now. So wow, I feel like I just talked about this to just you three.
Now we can share it with the world.
Okay, great. A lot of those tracks were just small snippets of just little moments that were written specifically for little moments in the show. So if I were to put out a Puff soundtrack right now, there would be 64 tracks, each about 2 seconds to 4 minutes. It would be the weirdest thing you've ever heard. And if you want that, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. But what I think is much better is maybe taking those best songs, the ones that are mostly already feel like a song, or at least a part of one, and turning it into a full-length song, getting it completely album-based, make it professional, put it up on all the streaming stuff, all the streaming sites, and release it that way. Right now, I'm actually working on Centaur, which right now, the version that's in the show is a small snippet of what is essentially a minute and a half of a song that just abruptly ends, and which is an awkward listen. But what instead, I think it should be about 3 minutes long. It should be like an actual song, and release it with the rest of the soundtrack. So essentially, I'm looking at a release sometime this summer. I think I'll know more specifically about dates really, really soon. As soon as I start to figure out what tracks and how long I have to work on each one. But thank you for basically hounding me, because if you didn't ask me politely, you're all very polite, polite over and over and over, I don't know if this is something I would necessarily do. So thank you so much.
Hi everybody, this is
there's a kitty.
He's here to play. He's down to clown. Maddie, there's one here for you. Let me dig it out and find it. Just be a moment. How were the scary security guards created? What was your thinking behind them? And this is from Instagram user a hug fan.
So basically, this conversation about these particular prop items started with like we didn't want to build ring wraiths, which is kind of essentially what they look like. So it's about figuring out like how do you kind of take the feeling of what that is, but have it not look like that whatsoever. And again, like at the pit we didn't have really much of a budget, so that was about I took I'll tell you what the hands are made out of. It was like packing supplies that I just had in a drawer because I didn't have a budget for that item. And so I thought, in the movies and in the books, the what that monster is really about the focus is sort of on their face and how they're sucking the essence out of a person. And I thought it would be kind of neat to focus on the hand aspect of them, the moment in the trailer when they're turning the doorknob, so to highlight the hands aspect. And I'm like, what if you could put it in your imagination that they were much larger than what they appear on than how they appear on camera. But yeah, and then I think that was one of the more successful prop items at the pit, and it was just about adapting as we went from space to space. It was about figuring out how to adapt that and make it bigger, but also still maintain the essence of what that is, which is stuff made out of your drawer at home. Yeah.
This is a one pertaining to the reading that we're doing next week. To make a little plug here, next week we're going to be doing a half-hour reading to 45-minute long reading of the first episode in the Kapowie Go-Go saga, Kapowie Go-Go-Go, episode 1. Now, the question is, what big-time actors would you love to see play your roles in a feature Kapowie film, or who would you like them to play other characters?
Oh boy.
So celebrity cast.
Oh man.
I mean, the reason I somewhat chose this one to lead, because I also could talk for 30 seconds after asking it, is because I have a list. So Kapowie Go-Go is the story of a blue-haired, spunky 14-year-old fighter who wants to be the very best, like no one ever was. She wants to head out to the world's Ultimate Warrior tournament, win that tournament, and become the world's greatest fighter, just like her dad, Swiftfist Go-Go, who mysteriously vanished some time ago. So in my heart of hearts, I have a long list of people that I would like to play Swiftfist Go-Go as great sci-fi cameos, including Jonathan Frakes, Michael Dorn, mostly a bunch of other people from Star Trek: The Next Generation, just because they do wonderful
Let's just
vocal.
hire them.
Yeah,
Let's just hire them.
Why don't we do that?
Yes.
What are they? They're not doing anything right now.
No.
No, that's wonderful. Yes.
1989. What's his name from Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Bob Hoskins.
Oh.
1989.
Yes.
Bob Hoskins as Mr. Smiles.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
1989 Bob Hoskins.
Oh,
yes,
I put
yes.
him in. Paul Giamatti could play my part. I play a character named Mr. Snuggles, who's a lovable scamp with a heart of gold. Or a Danny DeVito could be that as well. Oh boy, I don't even know what else. But please join us next Friday to see us do it. It'll be a fun time.
It's really, really fun. And for those of you who only know us from wizard-based comedy, it's sort of like a celebration of Toonami, video games, 90s, X-Men, anything that Final Fantasy, especially, like anything you did you wasted time doing after school.
What you rushed home to watch, it's there. There's a lot of Dragon Ball Z. There's a lot of Pokemon. It's kind of just all of the other things from the 90s or the late 90s, early 2000s that weren't wizard based, all kind of mashed into one epic story. And so I love it. I can't wait to bring it to you all. Boy, celebrities. I just think our cast is just so good.
We'll be in such a position to be able to ask for it. Matt, this is a question. Does power reside in your glorious mane?
Oh, I lost it for a while back in the day, and I guess that's the time that I did write puffs, so maybe this is actually taking things from me. Oh no. I think, but I would like to believe so. I would like to believe that I get a lot of my abilities from this. Great.
Follow-up question to that specific question. were there characters that you particularly liked writing the dialogue for in Puffs or in your other things? Is there anybody that like, even now that you're done, you still can come up with jokes for or non sequiturs for?
Two answers. So Wayne is specifically very much rooted in me as a middle schooler, high schooler, elementary schooler even. I was not the coolest kid in the world, and I had a lot of moments of my life of embarrassment or bullying or, daydreaming. And so a lot of Wayne stuff is very specifically me, and it was very fun and therapeutic in some ways to write some of that down on a paper to make someone else say and then make a bunch of people watch. Otherwise, though, some of the people who, though, the one bit that still makes me laugh, but I wrote every line I possibly could, is that it's still that Victor, the character Victor, all of his lines are Ivan Drago's lines from Rocky IV. It's one of my favorite jokes in the show. I still find it hilarious. I got all of Ivan Drago's lines in, though, so,
My favorite
All of them.
performances with that were always when nobody left except for one guy kind of near the back. He just was like ha. I get it.
Everybody, I hate to grind this to a halt. We have a very important question here. And this is from the live chat. And sorry, it just came in. I would normally we'd keep going. From a user named Nick Carrillo.
Oh, Carrillo.
Okay,
asking,
all right.
Who is your favorite Nick Carrillo, and why?
Oh boy. I think that there's an essence to the Nick Carrillo, the clumsy long bottom Nick Carrillo, that I just think that he taps into something that's special, and I think that's you can't beat that.
I like this only happened a few times, but there's a couple of Zach Smiths where Nick Carrillo did the opposite. He was very supportive and like a very spiritual Zach Smith, that's a genuine answer because that's the side of Nick that I feel like I get to see behind closed doors.
I have three to just answer. One is Nick Carrillo from the Facade Tectonics Institute, who is a construction industry and nonprofit trade association professional.
I hate that guy.
Well, if he's not your taking, the other Nick Carrillo is a PLM program manager in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then the North American
hit me up.
own Nick Carrillo, who is an evangelism catalyst.
All these people are on LinkedIn.
All of them are on LinkedIn and Googleable when you type in Nick's name frantically to come up with a bit while your friends are stalling. Next up, this is fun, Matt. Like we don't necessarily go like, oh, we're gonna be making parody content of stuff.
Yeah.
Our thing is more like we kind of go like, oh, how can we make an homage to this, or like how do we use genre-based things to tell other stories and so forth, which is more akin to like what Kapowie is. But somebody asked Paddington Parody.
Oh yes.
So funny enough, one of the things we've been discussing, because we kind of wanted to do a family show of some kind, just because people really seem to enjoy. Matt writes very wonderful jokes and characters, and we tend to do the productions in which those people swear.
Yes.
And there seems to be a large contingent of people who enjoy the jokes, but not the swearing.
Yes. We tend to perform in places with bars, and so the swears just kind of naturally come from that. But, one of my something that I love is that there are companies of children out there performing puffs without the swears. Obviously, they do the family-friendly version. Oh boy, I would love to tackle the world. So me and Steve have actually been talking about this a little bit of just tackling not just the world of Paddington though, but the world of all lovable British bears who are out there helping young boys or girls in their lives.
And generally hanging out in the woods and in boats. They generally have rodent antagonists or anyways, we have friends.
They make the world around them better.
Yeah.
This week on a non-related thing, we were working on a pitch for an animated series called Barry and the Forest of Wood, about a young British bear and his group of forest friends. And they had a little friend named Little Kathy, and she went off And now it's some years later, and she's arrived back from her second stint trying to do grad school, and she's now hanging around in the Forest of Wood, and they have to help her solve her adult problems. So if you happen to be a development executive watching this, we could talk about this further, perhaps over dinner.
We're talking to you.
That sounds like a bankable idea.
Jocelyn.
How often did you mess up those family show lines?
Oh,
And
how often?
did you mess up the family show lines? And what was the audience reaction if we cursed in the middle of one of the family shows?
How often did I mess up?
I mean, you didn't really have.
I only had a couple things that I had to change for the family friendly. I almost messed up once or twice, but I don't think I officially did. But we did have a bit in the dressing room that if you messed up, you had to put $1 on the sweater dryer.
Well, everyone yelled shame at you.
Shame.
I managed to go nearly the entire run off Broadway without doing it before, in the middle of a summer matinee, just confidently shouting that snakes are assholes to a room full of family, but I didn't hear that I said it. And everybody around me started acting weird. And I was like, boy, that seems strange. Yeah, it feels weird. You feel really bad.
It's just in the other version of the show is just in your muscle memory. So you're not messing up intentionally. It's just your brain wants to go back to what it's used to saying.
Brian, this is a two-parter.
Okay.
What's your favorite film score? And then kind of as an addendum to that, who are your favorite film composers?
All right. Well, my favorite film score composer is easy because that's John Williams.
Who?
If it Johnny Williams?
Oh, Johnny Boy.
Yeah. We did this bit by ourselves. So
and I thought it was good enough.
It feels rehearsed.
Good enough to bring it back.
It feels rehearsed now. It felt natural before. But if it were not for old Johnny Williams, I wouldn't want to be a film score composer. I saw Jurassic Park when I was 6, and it rocked my world. And I was like, I want to do that. But other great scores that I love are Vertigo. It's just perfect. Bernard Herrmann. And basically anything Bernard Herrmann did with Hitchcock, I think that's an amazing collaboration between director and composer. And they never made the same movie or score twice. So it's fantastic. Also, I didn't say this to you three before, but another one, I could talk about this all day. In fact, look, how long do I have? So Ennio Morricone is another one that I absolutely adore. Because all of his scores are completely different, and all of his stuff that he did for the Fistful of Dollars trilogy, he somehow made electronic instruments like the electric guitar and chanting and chains become the sound of the Old West well before the invention of electricity. But somehow now when you hear it, it's the sound of the Old West, just because he nailed it so hard. But yeah, those are some of my.
I feel like the ones that we all know, even if you're not thinking about music all the time, are the composers that turn music into an extra character.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, like, if you took out the music, like, you just couldn't imagine how that movie could function, because it feels as if all those actors and characters are interacting with that music, even though maybe they have no idea what it's going to sound like.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be another layer of immersion, and if it is another layer of immersion into the story, it has to be. It becomes part and parcel with it, not just music to movie, but also movie to music.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work without it, and you can absolutely hear them and see the movie by just listening to the music.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is a quick one for me. What was the most recent soup I had?
Oh.
The answer to that is pho, and I give it 10 out of 10 slurps.
Our favorite pho place opened up this week again, so we immediately needed to deliver.
Matt or Maddie or Brian, what was it like when you learned Puffs was going to be available for streaming?
It's crazy. It's insane. It still is insane that people are out there just able to watch it whenever they want. It's crazy, especially whenever we had the limited run through Fathom events in movie theaters as well. It's awesome. It's cool. It's something you don't expect, especially given that Puffs was intended to be a show that played 5 performances in a little theater in New York. That it's available so widely is, I don't know. It's awesome. Thank you all for making that happen.
Yeah, we were at Disneyland the day it premiered on Fathom, and I just remember it was funny, like just when the screenings started, like watching reactions on Twitter happen, like time zone by time zone in the US.
Very strange.
Really funny.
I was in Australia. I was in Melbourne, Australia the day of that. And so I remember it was early in the morning for me, and I just kind of sat with my computer ready to, I was like, oh, I'll take a look at it in case. And then all the stuff started kind of flooding in. It was like, oh, well, this is what I'm doing today.
It's also funny just because it's like our like the people who seem to like the things we make, seeing that they're somewhat the same the world over is very comforting, because it means there's this like army of awesome good people out there.
Yeah.
Maddie, did you like playing Harry or Eddie more, and why?
Well, I've only obviously played Harry a lot more than I played Eddie. I think at the end of the day, Harry, but I liked doing the research for Eddie a lot, because I'm not doing a Daniel Radcliffe impression when I'm doing the Harry lines. I was attempting to do an Eddie Redmayne impression for Eddie, and then just going back and to listening to a bunch of listening to his voice in a bunch of movies and figuring out that he does have a very specific voice, and so I love doing the research on that. So I'm gonna say Harry, but doing Eddie's really, really
fun. We have somebody starting up directing a production of Puffs very soon, in some way, shape, or form. Any advice on how to direct the show or what to keep in mind?
Oh boy. I think that so it's Kristen McCarthy Parker who directed the production of Puffs, as you've seen on the Amazon or whatever streaming service you use, or on the New York stage. I think the specific things that I'd pick up from that are things that I've seen within rooms and whatnot. I think the biggest thing to think about is all of the transitions and moving really fast through those specifically. The play jumps around very quickly from scene to scene to scene, or location to location, or year to year. And having those moments be as seamless as possible, I think is the recipe for success. As long as the show has a ball, you keep the ball up in the air, and you make it very specific the moments that the ball falls, and we all kind of sit and watch the still ball for a second. That's the most important thing to think about.
Coolest fan interaction?
Oh man, I think this happened multiple times, but for me personally, it was there's the group that shall not be named, which is a wonderful group in New York City. Is the first time they all showed up and cosplayed the Puffs characters. Like they had specifically tracked down items that from Maddie's design to wear, and that's what you dream of when you make something, is that one day someone will like it enough to dress up as the characters. Still
right,
mind blowing to me.
It's I think we had our first person was like an Oliver at the pit.
Yeah.
And it was enough that we all had to like stop and I think make that person stay longer than they intended. Take more pictures with Langston around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
can I say?
Yeah, go for it.
There was a really lovely family that came together to see Puffs at New World Stages, and all 4 of them were dressed up. So the little boy was Voldy, the girl was Susie, and then the dad was I think the dad was Jay Finch and the mom was Zach Smith, or maybe that was reversed.
The mom was Zach Smith, yeah.
But and then they waited at stage door to talk to us and get pictures, and they were very nice. And I just love the idea of like a family saying like, hey, let's go to the theater together as an activity, but let's all dress up together. I think that's really lovely.
Oh, this is an interesting one. What changed the most with the addition or subtraction with an actor? I mean, like the show was kind of like written with specific people in mind. Yeah. And then over the course of us being lucky enough to have it be such a success and keep going, the cast started changing.
Yeah.
like from your perspective watching it,
Yeah.
were there people that specifically it was very, very different or something
No,
like
it's
that?
funny because it's normally the way I work, is whenever we're all in a room and I'm with the wonderful actors that I get to work with, is it is about writing to that specific person and playing with what that person's very good at making funny and what they think is funny, because I want them to enjoy their time while they're performing the show. And so, obviously when new people came in, by that point, the script was frozen and I wasn't really adding anything. But I think what was important with Puffs was that we kind of just embraced that person could do whatever they wanted within the confines of what was in the script, and pleased to do whatever they thought was funny. So I don't know if I have any specific things. It changed significantly every time someone came in, and that was just kind of exciting.
It would change the rhythms.
Yeah.
During those moments, which isn't bad. It just like takes some it takes some time to get used to, especially if you don't have the opportunity to rehearse with that new person coming in.
Yeah, I'd say, like, for example, with like Julie, Julie who was original Megan, there's this sense of almost like you see her having these layers and layers of affectation as armor to hold up this very like gooey, nerdy center. And then when Sonia came on as her replacement, Sonia, I think it felt like her more authentic self was, she is that surface as well. Like she's that, but she also happens to be a Puff, as opposed to this is a thing I'm putting on to run away from who I truly am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this is what I like, and this is how I like looking and expressing myself and being into like dark, scary things, and snakes are awesome and all those other things. But I still happen to be this like gooey weirdo.
Yeah. And when Alex Haynes, who replaced Nick Carrillo as Jay Finch, but specifically Zach Smith, the tenor of Zach Smith changed quite a bit, and it became a little bit more positive in general, which was funny. And the topics that Zach Smith would come in were very different. It kind of just changed that aspect of the show in a delightful way. I mean, both are equally wonderful. And so that was always fun to pop in, just because I was so used to Nick's, and it's like, that's funny.
Were you all surprised that Zach Smith was such a breakout character and moment?
Yes. So we briefly talked about this in one of the Q&As after, but for people who don't know, the character within the script was intended originally just to be like a walk-on line. It was while we were still in rehearsal and I was still working on the script. Wayne was still mad at Megan and Oliver for a longer period of time, going into year 6, and so Wayne had made a new friend named Zach Smith, and he just kind of said one line towards Megan, and he left forever. But then I quickly just decided, I was like, let's just make Oliver, Wayne, and Megan make up at the end of year 5, just so we can move into this, we can more quickly move into the story in year 6. And so Zach Smith disappeared for a bit, and then I decided, we wanted to bring back sports in some capacity, and then it was just kind of like, let's bring this, what Nick was doing with this Zach Smith character in, and he just did like, Nick is just a wonderful improviser, so I think in that rehearsal, because I hadn't written anything yet or something, he just kind of went off on like a wizard bit or a joke, and it was just like one line. I was like, that's funny, yeah, sure, Nick, you could say whatever you want there, and then it grew from one line to 2 lines to paragraphs to monologues to etc. And it was delightful. And it was absolutely surprising that something that grew from one little walk-on line became something that so many people are excited to talk about on the internet.
I think there's also something too, like, it was the one thing, like, theater is always kind of different, but it was the one thing that was specific. It's like your souvenir for the night you saw the show, is like, that's the one unique thing that you have.
I saw it the night Zach Smith said this. Was really special about it.
Yeah, and it became just something that I think was wonderful about the show in the way that it ran in New York, and it's what I also recommend to everyone doing it out there is like within those specific moments that it's implied in the script to do this, how different can you make the show from night to night for anyone who does want to come and see it multiple times? And Zach Smith's a special part of that.
Maddie, what's your favorite medium when it comes to art?
Definitely I think when it comes to prop building, I do gravitate towards like, what's around and what's available, what could people easily replicate in their homes if they wanted to build that item. But my answer is really simple, which is I love pencil and paper. I love drawing. I love Yeah, I love working in a sketchbook by myself.
Just time for a couple more, and then we'll, just because we don't want to take up the rest of your evening, because you've been so generous to spend your time with us. The answer of will we die just a little is will we die just a little.
You've got it. You heard it here, folks.
Brian, what's your favorite planet other than Earth?
My favorite planet. Ooh. Well, I guess it would have to be Mars. Does anyone else watch The Expanse?
I've heard great things.
I've read the books too, and it is phenomenal. And I think the Martian culture in the show and in the books are amazing because they're talking about people, and they still refer to them as Martians, which kind of makes you go, oh, kind of plays on that whole trope of what a Martian is in a sci-fi series. So, Mars.
Thank you.
You heard it here. You heard it here first, folks.
Brian likes Mars.
Maddie, these are two for you. First, what product do you use for your hair? It looks super fluffy.
This is shampoo and blow drying it. There's nothing in my hair at the moment.
And these are tied. Were there any other plans for props to be Harry's friends? / also for Matt, where did the idea of the Ron Mop come from?
So the Ron, I'll let Matt start this question because I know that one of the first things Matt knew about Pops was that Ron would be played by a mop.
Yeah, that was just it, literally. I don't even know if I know where it came from, but within the night that I was on a subway train, I had the initial idea of like what Puffs was, which is just, oh, wouldn't it be funny to see the horror show of all the other kids at this particular wizard school. It was a very quick leap to just like, oh, it'd be funny if Ron was played by a mop, just because sometimes I think he's treated very insignificantly to the story, quite a bit. And so it's just like, oh, well, what if we just kind of embrace that? He's just usually there to be a sounding board at times. And a mop seemed like the thing because, you know, the end is often used to be hair, and hair seems to be a defining quality also in the books for Ron. That's where it came from.
Yeah, and then so knowing that that's what Matt wants for that particular character / object, everything else is sort of about like figuring out how to fill in that equation. So for like Hermione, or like what are the ghosts, what are the objects that they all get when they're being sorted. It's all about like trying to make each object like stand on its own and be its own thing, but they also all need to fit together to make a universe.
And it was also because we didn't know how fast the script would go, and so it was easier for those characters to be able to be played by whoever was holding a thing, or if it was in order to do the year 3 time travel, oh, it's 3 people in these wigs, like it allowed a certain amount of elasticity as opposed to other characters that could otherwise become impressions or more framed moments.
Yeah.
This is one that's very specific and dear to my heart, which is a hot dog a sandwich? Tina fans want to know. I would say no, but our original Cedric, Evan Maltby, would say yes. So if you agree that a hot dog is a sandwich, please tweet at Evan Maltby, spelled at Evan EVAN MALTBY, and say I agree. And if you disagree, tweet Evan Maltby at EVAN MALTBY and say I don't agree. And if literally one of you does this, it will make my night.
I feel like if you cut the bun in half, it becomes a sandwich, would be my thing. But if it's just a hot dog as intended, I don't think it's a sandwich.
I don't think it's a sandwich.
I don't know if all bread-based
things have to be with meat.
I guess it just feels like if you maneuver the bun in the meat so that it's this way instead, so there's a bread on top and a bread on bottom, I guess then it's like a sausage sandwich.
I guess I feel like if you cut the bun fully through and then did that,
yeah.
But then I feel like you're missing half the fun, which is this like sausage mitt.
It's just a broken bun.
It just feels wrong.
This is a sweet one. How does it feel to know you've inspired a ton of young actors, composers, directors, and producers around the world?
Good. And surprising. And thank you for feeling that way about the silly little play that we had an idea for once. It's truly wonderful. Thank you. It's nice to know that a lot of thought and a lot of work went into a thing, and you appreciated it. There's no better feeling than that.
It's also been really sweet as like people begin to do it at their high school or their community theater or their regional theater or whatever. The people who reach out to, like, I know like everybody in the cast, the original cast, or get reached out to by folks, and that's really lovely. Whenever we talking to somebody who's trying to figure out how to do something, or like, oh, what do you do to learn how to do impressions? Like it's just very swell, and it feels really really lovely.
Yeah, I have to say, we talk about this a lot, but we all did it for just 5. We all made the thing with the intention of only doing it 5 times at the pit. And the fact that we're still talking about it, and the fact that you asked that question, the answer is it's absolutely surreal, and it's very humbling and very gratifying that we decided to do this. And that sounds like a very good transition to what Steve might be laughing about.
Oh, no, I was just laughing that Evan joined the chat and
good.
said it's a taco, which is like, all right, man,
No.
you're changing your game.
No.
Which is fine. Like,
Evan,
life is a journey. You don't start it as the same person you end it as. A relationship or a friendship is with somebody who changes over time. So like that's, it's just funnier if
like a taco.
Yeah, exactly. So ramping up into the end here. Hey, first of all, thank you all for joining us. This is crazy. It's been
Thank
again
you.
more lovely than we could have possibly imagined. Matt, do you want to plug next week a little bit?
Yeah, so please, if you've had a fun time with these streams, we'll be bringing you a lot of that same goodness in a much more condensed package. Kapowie Go Go Go, episode 1, next Friday, 7:30 Eastern time. It's really, if you like this kind of stuff, I think you'll have a good time with it. It's power fights, it's giant swords, it's energy blast, and it's a lot of heart and hope and feelings of belief. What more could you ask for on a Friday night? So please join us. Yeah, we have a different cast. So you'll see some familiar faces from Puffs. You'll see a bunch of new faces, some wonderful people that we've worked with for a really long time. You'll even get to see me in a wig and some weird makeup, possibly a cat suit. I haven't decided if I'm going to put it on yet.
Do it.
You have to.
Please.
Yeah, I also think like if you have friends who you think would enjoy our stuff, but otherwise they were like, oh, I'm not really into wizard things. If they like anything that is a giant, fun, silly franchise of power fights and things like that,
Right.
tell them to join in and check out these streams.
It's
also thank you. Yeah, for
if you like.
Yeah, sorry, Brian. Go.
I'm sorry. If you're like, wow, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme song, I wish that was a genre. Then I think you might like the music.
There's a whole new Brian score out there waiting for you, fans of Brian's music, and it's
so different than Puffs, but that's the way I like it.
And Kapowie's fun just because this was a show that we did before Puffs, and now we've been revisiting it, so we have all the lessons that we learned from that show. We're taking all the lessons we've learned from these live streams. Please, it's already enough that you've watched us and joined us, but if you feel like telling your friends, we'd be how wonderful.
It's also a thing that it's like it's starting from the first moment of it, so you don't need any prior knowledge or anything like that. It also just means so much for all of you who tweet or Instagram about the show or about the channel and things. We didn't expect to be doing this a month ago. It's trying to make lemonade out of worldwide lemons.
I love lemons.
Lemons are great. They can make your beverage very refreshing and tart. Thank you for spreading the word. If you think there are people who would like our stuff, poke them on the shoulder and ask them to tune on in or something like that. It means the world to us, and it helps us keep making stuff. Yeah, we'll also have other things on the channel. We'll probably have a bunch more bees. There will at some point be a Zach Smithathon. We'll probably do more Q&As with just people who aren't us, who are also involved in the show and so forth. And then we'll have some other new original sort of things we can't totally confirm yet, as we are currently writing them.
Yeah, please let us know if you liked this and you want more of these. Just leave it in the chat or in the comments below whenever the video becomes a regular video, as it's wanted to do. We'd love to bring more of these with some different folks, maybe us again, but yeah, let us know.
Anybody else have anything else to plug at the moment, Brian?
I also do the music for another YouTube channel called Fables of Refuge. It is a Dungeons and Dragons series. I do all of the campaign music that after they do the show live, they put my music behind it. And I guess follow me on Twitter if you want more news about the Puff soundtrack. That's really an amazing new sentence for me. But yeah, absolutely. I'm working on that. So get ready.
Also, is like if there are any, I know there were like a ton of questions here, and if you guys have any more questions or specific questions for any of us, feel free to reach out on Instagram or other social media platforms, and we can try to answer those things to you one-on-one.
And the thing that, and the thing that we're getting used to, which is like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.
Smash all the buttons. Wonderful. Perfect. Sincerely, thank you all again for wanting to listen to us chat about things. We'll be back again. Join us next Friday for Kapowie Go 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 episode 1. You've all been wonderful. Have a wonderful Friday night and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
What's his name? What's his name? What's he doing?
Bitchin' around, bitchin' here, bitchin' there.
What's his name? What's his name? What's he doing?
Bitchin' around, bitchin' here, bitchin' there.
What's his name? What's his name? What's he doing?
Bitchin' around, bitchin' here, bitchin' there.
What's his name? What's his name?
It's your boy Mouse Tax, J. Finch, finching around, finching the halls, finching himself, J. Finch, finching the world, finching you, the finch.